Hello, Internet. The Morgan You Know podcast network presents Balls and Brew.
Welcome back to another edition of the flagship sports podcast here on the Morgan You Know podcasting network. I am your host, Rod Morgan. This podcast is executively produced by James Jamriska. We talk about balls on this particular sports podcast, golf balls sometimes, basketball quite often, football very often, never very often baseball, but we do it in a way that you might do it with your buddies sitting around the sports bar. That's why we call it Balls and Brew. And joining me as my co-host every time we sit down and talk about sports from North Carolina, my guy, the old man, the bald man, the tried and true, Chris King. Chris, hello.
What is up, Rod? I'm coming to you from the heart of what could be a mega conference in the near future.
That's very true. Like the whole entire United States could just be one mega conference someday. Who knows what's going on in the state of college football these days? We chopped that up a couple episodes back. Chris, I gave you a great, nice intro there. Did not get angry with you for a reason, because now I'm going to have to get a little bit stern here. There's been a bit of a controversy in the Morgan You Know podcast network land. Jimmy and I have made reference to it a couple of times. You, Chris, have been unavailable mysteriously the last couple of times we recorded podcasts after the Save the World draft. Chris, I mean, were those mysterious illnesses, or were you dodging us? Let's just start there before we get any deeper.
There was no dodging, and if our faithful listeners would go out and listen to the Yeah We Know podcast with you and Jimmy, they would hear my reasoning behind and my unflinching steadfastness with my team from that apocalyptic mega team of mine.
All right, so basically what I will say here quickly is that we were all drafting people to save the world with. There was a stipulation where you had to draft either a real person or an actor that portrayed a real person, and Chris snuck into the draft The Rock, based upon The Rock playing a character named Chris Vaughn, who was inspired loosely by the real-life person Buford Pusser. And Chris is absolutely, no, hold on. You're absolutely unapologetic about it, and so I'm guessing by your tone already taken that you still are unapologetic about it, and you are happy about this heel turn that you've made in your life.
Loosely based. He goes into his hometown, is being overrun by criminals. He takes it upon himself to dismantle this criminal organization. Maybe some details from the real-life story of Buford Pusser has been changed, but The Rock plays this character in the movie Walking Tall, which is a remake of the original Walking Tall, which is based on the real-life exploits of one Buford Pusser.
Wow. I think that's awfully flimsy, but if you can still rest your head on your pillow at night, your extremely old head on your extremely old pillow on your extremely old bed at night, if you can do that, then that's fine. Listen,
there were some crazy draft picks from some other people on that night, and I think it's getting a little bit ridiculous. I see where the hatred is coming from. Everyone is ganging up on me for my one maybe-ish pick when people were trying to draft robots, trying to draft superheroes. We allow the superhero. Drafting serial killers.
Yeah, I was going to say this. So you're trying to say Neo is a superhero? Is that what you're also now using as an argument?
Yes, Neo is by far a superhero. He had superhuman abilities by able to control and dismantle machinery with his mind. If that's not a superpower, I don't know what is.
I mean, I suppose Neo gets to get in on the same way that we allowed Roberts to have the guy who is the cop before he's RoboCop in as well, right? So, I mean, I get what you're saying. You're spraying blame all around the place. Typical villain stuff. That's great. Like you said, go back, listen to the last Morgan You Know episode where we did the draft. Listen to the Yeah We Know where Chris just cut a promo that Vince McMahon would be proud of, where he was defending himself for that. But this isn't the spot for that anymore. This is a sports podcast. But Chris, you didn't know this. One other way that I made you pay for your sins of outwardly cheating and being happy about it in that draft was I did not let you join me for a visit with the Hall of Famer Father Pete. So how do you feel about that?
I'm a little bit upset I always love having Father Pete on the pod. I love the discussions we have with him. He is a big time Luca fan, as we all know. He is a Hall of Famer, as we all know. I see where your loyalties lie.
That's right. We are going to have a check-in with Father Pete after Chris and I chop up a couple of what I'm going to refer to as old man takes. I'm going to fire a couple of questions at Chris. He doesn't know the questions that I'm going to fire to him, and he can take a second if he needs to, because again, he's an old man. He needs to collect his thoughts, but then tell me what's on his mind. I got a couple of NFL topics I'm going to throw at him, and then I'm going to give him an NBA topic as we lead to Father Pete and I discussing Kevin Durant for what I will contend will be the last time on this podcast until he gets traded or the NBA season starts. One of those two things has to happen before we talk about Kevin Durant again. But for now, the NFL. We're going to do our best to chop up a couple of NFL topics here, even though our guy Josh Williams, the handicapper, is not here, but he will be joining us very soon for his extensive season preview thoughts. Chris, here we go. The first NFL question I have for you is, should we care that the New England Patriots seemingly have no offensive coordinator? Because all of a sudden the last couple of days I have heard an awful lot of talk all about that. And I, for one, hate the Patriots and think it's kind of cool, I guess. What do you think about the Patriots not having an offensive coordinator at the moment?
I don't like the Patriots at all. I am happy that there is some internal strife that may be going on. But deep down, I really don't care. It's the Bills' division to lose there. The Patriots aren't going to upend them. They're not going to beat them twice this year. Maybe they can sneak out a win in New England, but they're not going to beat the Bills twice. Josh Allen and the Bills will win that division. They will make it to the playoffs, and you'll see New England probably fighting for a wild card berth at best.
What if I said to you, Bill Belichick is a genius for this and only this reason? No one else on his team will now be required to talk to the media other than him as far as the coaching staff goes, right? Because as the NFL league mandate states now, offensive, defensive coordinators talk to the media and the head coach. If you have no offensive or defensive coordinator, the only person talking to the media is Bill Belichick, who gives them absolutely nothing. Could that be the method behind his madness?
It's smart on his part. If he doesn't want to get his team distracted by this, then yeah, don't let anybody else talk. And if he doesn't have an official coordinator on either side of the ball, then you're stuck with Bill. And then, not even the special teams coordinator has to talk to the media, so it's just Bill. And he's not going to say anything.
Most definitely. He's had very little to say about this particular topic, which leads to rampant speculation, which could be what Belichick loves an awful lot. Who knows what's in the mind of that sleeveless, hoodie-wearing football genius. Chris, here's my next question for you. Maybe not football genius related. Your Dallas Cowboys, 17 penalties in their first preseason game after leading the NFL by a huge number last year. I believe 11 penalties ahead of the whole entire league as the year finished. Chris, your thoughts on your Cowboys seemingly not tightening it up any?
So I'm not really concerned. It's a preseason game. Very few first stringers were actually playing in that game. I rarely pay attention to any preseason game, let alone watch. So I'm not that concerned. However, I am adamant that I don't believe Mike McCarthy is a very strong-willed coach. I do think that sometimes his teams do lack discipline, and that does concern me when the regular season comes around. But I could really care less if it was 27 penalties in a preseason game.
All right, so you're going to lean on preseason. Doesn't really matter, much the same way that I would tell everyone to calm down about anything they wanted to freak out about Summer League in the NBA. Chris, I'm going to give you a bonus question here. The baseball season, I guess, is winding towards teams jockeying for playoff position. How much care are you giving the baseball playoff chase? Because I heard some talk of that on the radio the other day, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that is starting. And for the first time in my life, I'm not involved. I wonder how much my co-host still cares.
I don't care a lot due to the fact that the Cubs are where they are. If the Cubs were in some sort of chase in the Central, I would be more involved. But for the most part, it's the same familiar faces we've seen the last couple years. Maybe one or two teams have changed, but you still have the Dodgers, the Padres, the Astros, the Yankees. These are the teams, the Braves again this year. These are the teams that are jockeying for position. These are the teams that are favored. They're the teams that are probably going to be in the AL and in the LCS. So I don't see that much real drama going on.
So essentially what you're saying here, let me try to relate this to college football, which is just absolutely crazy that this is where I've decided to go with my analogy, but stay with me here for a second. So we expanded the college football playoff to 4 teams when it was just 2 teams would get labeled into the BCS game. We expanded to 4 teams, hoping that that would mean more conferences might get a shot at that 4, but what actually ended up happening was the SEC would still get 2 of the 4 schools in there, and then it just became a thing, well, there's got to be 2 SEC schools, and we were like, wait a minute, that's not actually what the rules were. So what you're saying is baseball has expanded its playoffs, but all are they doing is just giving an extra shot for the Yankees or the Red Sox or, the Padres or somebody that basically has been there before, but now they're not going to miss out, they're going to make it.
Yeah, and listen, anytime any league, amateur or professional, decides to expand playoffs, it is nothing more than trying to add more revenue to the bottom line. They may have used COVID as an excuse, especially like in basketball with the play-in game, baseball as well, but it's really just a money grab. Same thing with college football, any kind of conference realignment or anything else like that. It's just a money grab.
The great Dick Ebersol has a quote that I use all the time, and I've probably said it on this podcast. Your answer to this and every other question is always money. Except, actually, this question that I'm about to ask you now. Let's go to the NBA here before we bring on...
Oh, wait. I have one for you.
Okay.
NFL-based. I know, and our listeners know, that you have not been a fan of Aaron Rodgers for a while now. But I also know that you are a fan of one Nicolas Cage. So I want your thoughts on how this Nick Cage look, this Nick Cage love affair with Aaron Rodgers. How do you feel about that? Is that on your radar at all?
First off, I feel like he's doing it just for me. And Aaron, I see you. You didn't have to thirst for my attention that hard by going with the complete all-out Nick Cage hairdo and wearing tank tops.
That was a great look, though. That was straight out of Con Air. That was a great look.
It absolutely was. The only thing he needed to carry around was a little bunny with a little bit of blood on it. It would have been a whole 9 yards there. Listen, I don't know what Aaron Rodgers ultimately wants to be in his life, but it is clear that at this stage in his life, he wants to be at the top of everybody's mind. So he's going to do and say a lot of weird stuff. He's going to come out and absolutely slam his rookie wide receivers for not being very good. And shocker, guys who don't have a whole lot of NFL experience aren't incredibly crisp and clean right now on routes. I'm shocked to hear that, but the best way to handle that, Aaron, is to go into the press and absolutely slam these guys. So no, I'm not going to be much of a fan of Aaron Rodgers, but I did see that he was thirsting for my affection, but it's not going to work.
Yeah, he even put that bust like in his locker rooms. Now he has Nick Cage looking down at him at all times.
Yeah, listen, I get it, and I can't blame him. I sometimes wish that I had more Nick Cage memorabilia that could look down at me while I'm recording this podcast, but we'll have to work on that for future episodes. All right, let me ask you an NBA question here before we bring on Father Pete. They released the whole entire schedule today, the day that you and I are taping this, but they had not released the whole entire schedule when I talked to Father Pete. But we did know the 5 Christmas Day games a few days ago, so I wanted your thoughts on 76ers at Knicks, Lakers at Mavs, Suns, Nuggets, Grizz, Warriors, Bucks, Celts. I'm not entirely sure where those other three games are played, but I know for a fact that the Lakers are in Dallas and that the Sixers are at New York. Your thoughts on the Christmas Day games? Can you believe New York got another Christmas Day game?
Uh, I'm not surprised. Large market, they'll get fans watching, they'll pull numbers, but I'm not interested in that game unless the Knicks make a move for Donovan Mitchell, which they're in talks again with, or the Sixers somehow get he who should not be named by Rod, Kevin Durant. So I'm not too concerned about that game. I do think that Lakers Dallas game could be really, really good. Luka should be in shape by then. So I really think, and I'd like to see how the Lakers fare if they can stay healthy all year. Hopefully Anthony Davis is still playing at that point.
Well, don't sleep on this little LeBron nugget that came out today as well, right? With all the other drama that can still hang over the Lakers, one piece was taken away today when LeBron signed a 2-year extension for a whole boatload of money, of course, because he's LeBron James, but to stay in LA. So now none of those questions about LeBron's future will at least be coming up for the Lakers this year. But I actually got to be honest with you. Bucks Celtics, who knows what that game's going to be like on Christmas Day. If those guys actually decide to play defense, that won't actually be that fun to watch. But that Grizz Warriors game, with the trash that Morant and Draymond have been throwing back and forth a little bit this offseason, and just the kind of basketball both those teams play, that'd be cool to see that one actually be on ABC and not be one of the weird ESPN games that day.
Yeah, like I am. So it's been a weird, 7-8 years for me when it comes to the Warriors. I've never been a Draymond Green fan, but when the Warriors were first coming up, Steph was an underdog. That's a good story to get behind. Now all I want to do is see them get beat. I don't want to see them in the NBA championships anymore. I want to see them get knocked out. I do love what the Grizzlies are doing. I think Ja Morant is a legit superstar. I want to see them just dismantle Golden State on Christmas Day.
Well, there we go. Well, you know what else? That's a little bit of a teaser, if you will, for some of your nice takes when we get deeper into the NBA preseason takes, which, believe it or not, have to come around. We're going to get all into football, and then football's going to get going for a couple weeks, and then the NBA season will start. So we're going to have to be doing that before too long. But on the other side of a quick little break here, we are welcoming in a Holy Cross priest, the director of student ministries at Notre Dame, campus ministries, excuse me. I can't believe I messed that up. I've done Father Pete's intro so many times. The director of campus ministry at Notre Dame, and as well as the chaplain of the men's basketball team. He is one of the few Hall of Famers we have here on the Morgan Podcasting Network, and I am happy to be welcoming him back to the pod on the other side. It's Father Pete McCormick. All right, I am honored, as I am every time that the Hall of Famer Father Pete decides to give us a little bit of his time. He is joining me right now because, frankly, Father Pete, I need someone who tends to see the good in people instead of always just looking to the evil in folks. So I think that you're well versed to be able to help me with that, wouldn't you say?
I'd hope so.
All right, now here's where I want you to start. All right, I want you to go back to this day with me. All right, I want you to go back to May. I believe it was May 7th of 2014. All right, Kevin Durant is accepting the MVP award for the 2013-2014 season that he has just played magnificently with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Okay, I can't remember exactly if it was soon before that press conference or soon after. KD quietly signs an extension with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Does not make a huge production of it, certainly doesn't make a television show of it where he's going to go on for his next move, right? So he is labeled as such an anti-LeBron, a hero, a way we were supposed to do things in the NBA at that time. He then, in the speech, gives his mother all due credit and says, "Mom, you're the real MVP." The Kevin Durant that you remember that day versus the Kevin Durant you're thinking about in 2022, Father Pete, how different are they?
Man, I have to say they're probably pretty different. And you think about that Kevin Durant, the one that received and accepted the MVP and then tipped his cap to his mom. This is before the the NBA championships. This is before much of the kind of frankly critique of his decision to go to Golden State. And I do think he had lived up until that point in his NBA career a rather kind of like privileged path. Like everyone was so enamored with his game. Here's a 7-footer who can bomb threes and who has a handle like that of a point guard. And truly, we use this expression a lot these days, and we talk about unicorns. And so I think Kevin Durant had been the beneficiary of a lot of praise and very little critique. But then I think the Golden State decision begins to open him up to some question around, here's this guy who instead of trying to win with the Oklahoma City Thunder and doing it the old-fashioned way, aka the Jordan way, goes and basically gets a cheat code and says, all right, Splash Brothers, I'm going to play with y'all, and we're going to do this thing. And don't forget about Draymond Green either. And to their credit, they roll, and they win, and they get 2. But I think that opened him up to a lot of critique, and I think that's the beginning of a turn for Kevin Durant in terms of this almost adversarial nature of his relationship with the media. Now, I think in fairness to him, I think he probably saw the media for what they were. They are themselves an industry, and their hot take or their opinion or their incisive critique of him moves the needle in some capacity, certainly generates clicks, gets ESPN and whatnot talking. So I don't know that he necessarily appreciated being the person, his decision-making, ultimately leading to a fair amount of critique so as to get people kind of like generating ratings, et cetera, et cetera. So I think in that moment, he begins to take on a very different public persona. What would be fascinating to know is in his inner circle, what is he like? Is he still that same old Kevin Durant, or has this whole experience really kind of changed the way he thinks about himself and he thinks about others?
It's one of those things that I can't quite wrap my head around, because to be able to perform under that level of pressure and that level of scrutiny in just a basketball game on an everyday standpoint just takes a level of concentration and toughness that I can't under any circumstances understand, right? And to be able to shut out so many parts of the outside world and try to focus in on one goal the way that he has throughout his AAU life and college life and pro life and all those things. I can't imagine any of that. But what then I get tripped up on, Father P, is if you can do all of those things, why in the world does it matter to you what people are saying to you about the championship that you won in Golden State? Why does it matter to you what Charles Barkley says on TNT, that you're a bus rider and not the bus driver? Why are you firing back at random guys with numbers at the end of their handle on Twitter when they criticize your game? Where do you suppose how did that come about? Because I get your talk about adversary with the media, and I get your talk about wanting a different kind of challenge, but why are we just firing back at everybody?
That's a really fascinating and compelling question. I think the way maybe to give consideration to this is by way of an analogy. Anyone who's ever had a flat tire, that when you have the flat tire, you have to stop, or else if you ride too long on it, you end up warping the rim. Now, of course, if you pull off to the side of the road, it's an inconvenience because, you got to wait for the tow truck and no doubt you got to have your car towed and put it into the station, et cetera, and then you got to wait even longer. Or you could, I suppose, try to limp it down the side of the road and maybe you can pull yourself off to an exit. And maybe there's a Sunco right there and you can pull in. But in that process, the rim will end up getting warped. And while you might have expedited one aspect of the process, you will, in other hands, perhaps made your issue even that much more worse. And I wonder, and I don't know because I've never spoken to Kevin Durant,
certainly,
but I wonder if his mentality of just trying to push through that experience, of going from this kind of real blissful experience of mostly praise and very little critique and a real gratitude for him being willing to stay with a small market team, but then immediately jumping and then playing for, at the time, and even to this day, the juggernaut of the league, just so that he could ultimately get the cred. I think it opened him up, one, to the old heads, the old NBA guys who, in their minds, did it the right way. Although, in fairness, Charles Barkley himself also did do some moving around with the hopes of getting a chip. He
Chuck
just
didn't
couldn't
even
get
get
it
a
done.
chip when he did it, so he's just jealous.
Exactly. So this is where Durant, I would say, probably needs to do some soul searching.
Thank you.
The other wonder that I would have about this, so one is has he been able to stop and process kind of that movement and what it did to him? But then the second part is and this would be a question to wonder. I sometimes think that maybe what Durant is deciding to do is, I'm going to put up this tough bad boy exterior because in some respects it serves as a smokescreen to the things that I really care about. That I can have this alternative persona that people are going to do what they do with, but in reality, it's all smoke. It's all smoke. And it allows him to stay focused actually maybe on the things that he's really genuinely caring about. And it could be his friendships, it could be his business pursuits, whatever the case might be. But no one really asks questions about that because it isn't nearly as sexy or juicy as the tweet he put out about whether or not Steve Nash should be his head coach.
Right, exactly. See, and that's where, I promise we're not going to get too much more meta. I want to stay with this for a second, and then we'll get a little more nuts and bolts here, right? But I struggle these days with, why do some of these decisions that these grown men and these NBA players make, why do I allow it to drive me so crazy, right? And on that level, I know that has more to do with me than it has to do with Kevin Durant, right? I get that. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I have a problem with KD now, okay? Not only being one of the greatest basketball players on the planet, but seemingly to me, based on a lot of his public comments, and a lot of which he controls himself through his own Twitter accounts and through his own media empires and his own podcasts and his own television shows, okay? Now, not only is KD telling me he's one of the greatest basketball players on the planet now, or ever has been, or ever will be in the future, but he's also one of the best businessmen who has ever lived and been on the planet before. He is one of the smartest thinkers who has ever lived on the world and been on the planet before. He knows more than any head coach or NBA general manager that has ever played basketball or will play basketball in the future. And I just don't understand how we got to a place where a man like this, that clearly needs no excuses from anyone, comports himself this way, still has a whole lot of fans and a whole lot of people who will carry his water in the media and on Twitter. And thinking about that situation drives me crazy, Father Pete, and I know that has more to do with me than Kevin Durant, but any comment you can give me there, I would appreciate.
Yeah, I think that Kevin Durant's playing the game. You know, the old adage in marketing is that the only bad news is no news at all. So Kevin Durant has made himself a public figure in this way, and it's probably been to his benefit in some respects.
I bet it has been. I bet you're right. There's a lot of money that's come in outside of basketball because of a lot of this awareness that he has gained through some of this. You're probably right.
You know, so I think there's a strategy there. I also think this is a tale as old as time. You know, let's look at the tradition that I come from as a Catholic priest. You know, look at the Bible. The people that get to the top, right, invariably are all types of nervous about the kind of folks coming from the bottom.
Okay.
They become paranoid about what could or what might unseat them from their way of life or from their level of comfort.
Add to that, he's 34 now, maybe facing a mortality in basketball that he's never faced before. Okay, I like where you're going here, Father Pete.
You know, so immediately, like, he's no longer 27. You know, you're seeing this play out right now at the Nets. He's 34 years old, and other teams just aren't willing to back up the Brinks truck in a way that they would have if he were 28. They just won't, because they think to themselves, this is a guy who has some serious injuries over the course of his career. He's now 34 years old, and frankly, he's kind of
the last time we saw him on the court. Pardon me, Father Pete, but the last time we saw him on the court, he was getting housed 4 straight games off the court. The Celtics basically owned him in that playoff series. I think that really does play in right now. Not only is he older and the injuries adding up, but the last time all of these GMs saw him on the court, they were like, wait a minute, your team didn't get out of the first round of the playoffs, so why am I going to fundamentally change everything on my team for you? So I totally agree with you there. Let me ask you on the Kevin Durant trade quest. We've done podcasts on that. People can listen to all that stuff there. I want to ask you this. When Kevin Durant basically came out and said, it's my coach or my general manager or it's me, What did you think of that? Because I don't know that we've seen it quite that explicitly. I think some people through back channels have made that known, but I don't think we've seen it come out quite that explicitly. And I was really taken aback by that day that news came out too. And I wonder if you had any thoughts there.
Yeah, I think it's a classic negotiating tactic. And regrettably, I think that Kevin Durant is realizing that he just doesn't have the leverage he thought he had. He just doesn't. And the NBA isn't willing to give up what the Nets want in order to let go of him. And add that into the element of, I think the Nets feel they got a really good team this year. So here's what I think is going to happen. We're in August right now, somewhere around mid-September. Steve Nash and the GM, what is it, Sean Marks? They're going to get together with Kevin Durant, and they're going to sit down, and they're going to smooth everything out. And it's going to be a kind of, we're going to let bygones be bygones. Lord knows Kevin Durant has done this umpteen times in his career. And I think come October, they're gonna try to take a crack at it. And if it isn't going well, maybe something at the trade deadline. But I really do think that the Nets are going to stay pat and they're going to hold firm. And the question to me is what to do with Kyrie Irving, but that's for a different day. But I really do think that the best course of action is that let them simmer, let them hang out in Ibiza or wherever they find themselves in the offseason. And then when they come back, there's a chance to really do something special because I do think the Nets got a good squad.
If I pinned you down to make you give me an answer as to your best guess as to why Kevin Durant, A, requested this trade from Brooklyn, or now B, has a problem with Steve Nash or Sean Marks, what answer would you give me?
Oh, I think he wanted a trade. And
but why? Why?
Why is he trying to do that?
Yeah, he got everything he wanted. He got Steve Nash because he wanted Steve Nash. He got DeAndre Jordan, for goodness sakes, because he wanted DeAndre Jordan. He got James Harden. He got Kyrie Irving. I don't understand.
Yeah, I really do think in his mind it's a you or me kind of scenario. So the Nets either are totally, okay, Kevin, we're going to keep you and we're all in. That means that we are going to listen to every single demand that you place upon us. Or we let you go. And I think what he's finding out is the Nets are saying, we'll just have it both ways because you have 3 years on your contract, and we really like Steve Nash, and we're not going to do him dirty like that.
I think that's definitely the case here. Sean Marks seems to have a good relationship with Joe Tsai, the owner of the Nets, and Marks and Steve Nash certainly have a good relationship. Those guys go way back, so I think that's definitely going to be at play here. Let me ask you this one last question. If you were Kevin Durant, again, but this is a different type of angle I'm going to ask you to think of Kevin Durant, would you be assuming Ben Simmons is A, playing for you right now, or B, not playing for you right now? What would you be assuming if you were Kevin Durant based on what you've seen?
I figure he's probably playing, but at a really limited load. I'll be fascinated to see if because in my mind there's an element of physicality that Ben Simmons has to overcome. Like, can his back actually hold up an entire NBA season? But it seems to me, as I watch from afar, there's also kind of a commitment factor. I just finished watching The Captain with Derek Jeter, and Jeter talks about this. Like, you're either playing or you're not. You're either available or you're not. And I wonder if Ben Simmons has that it factor. And his career suggests that might not be kind of his highest priority.
Yeah, that's a wonderful way to put it, Father Pete. That's why you're a Hall of Famer right there with the turn of phrase you just put on that right there. Let me echo something you said there, and then we'll close up Brooklyn Nets talk here, and then we'll have you talk about something that I know makes you much more happy than waxing philosophical with me about Brooklyn, but I do appreciate it. So you said you think Kevin Durant's going to start the year with the Nets. I would tend to agree with you that Kevin Durant is going to start the year with the Nets. I think Daryl Morey on some level has laid the path for general managers in the NBA to lay out and take the media criticism that they're just going to take for a little while and prove that that's really the only pressure you actually have. So if you allow that to not bother you, you can wait as long as you need to. Kevin Durant, however, I don't think is going to pull a Ben Simmons and just sit out. I really don't think Kevin Durant's going to be able to do that. Now, I'm just looking from afar here, but he seems to have much more competitive fire to him. But what I would presuppose to you is your throw out there of the All-Star break might be far too rosy of a prediction. If this team's 2-6, we could see complete upheaval quickly, the same way that we saw Mike Brown fired after 4 games in Los Angeles, and the same way we saw, I can't remember the guy's name in Phoenix, but he was fired after like 9 games.
He was not long for this world.
Yeah. So I think we could easily see that type of scenario, right? And I tend to agree with you that these people on this podcast network have heard me just go crazy about Kyrie many, many times before. But I kind of think that there's a whole lot of smoke around Kyrie to the Lakers. And I think no matter what Jeannie Buss tries to cryptically tweet into the night, she will probably acquiesce and do exactly what LeBron James wants in the end. And Kyrie Irving will probably be on that team.
Yes. I actually think Kyrie is going to be in LA. I think that's a matter of time. I also just want to make a side comment. What I think has been fascinating about the way the Nets have managed this situation has been they just rode out the media storm. They took calls, they did their job, and now ESPN has seemingly moved on to football. And on occasion, they do a Kevin Durant story, but it's what they intuitively understood and I think masterfully managed was like, you know what? We don't care what you say. We have all legal rights to navigate this circumstance as we see fit, and we're going to do it. And I just love it, love it, love it. In this day and age of, immediate hot takes and, kind of banner alerts and all that type of jazz, like the Nets just rode that out. They're taking care of their own business, and they're going to move at their own pace. I just think it's the blueprint for how organizations really do need to manage these situations, because it takes the steam out of the story and allows them to actually do their jobs.
I think as well we have a undisclosed settlement between the Philadelphia 76ers and Ben Simmons for some of the money that was held out when he was not playing. I think that was probably one of the smartest things Adam Silver's actually ever done. Made sure that that did not get released out there, because I believe that's the other Pandora's box that is here.
Yeah.
I don't want this to come across as, Rod yelling at clouds is mad that he doesn't like Kevin Durant anymore because he doesn't respect him. That's a whole lot of what I am saying. But, I just think there's a problem that you're going to have a guy who's about to walk into the first year of a 4-year, $200 million deal that he willingly signed. Okay. The second deal, along with the team that he willingly came to in the first place on another free agent deal where nobody forced him to come there. Okay. Forced out one coach, trying to force out a second coach, trying to force out a general manager, brings on DeAndre Jordan when the team seemingly didn't want him because they jettisoned him as quickly as they could, forced them to bring on James Harden even though the team seemingly didn't want him because they jettisoned him as quickly as they could, forced him to bring on Kyrie Irving, and the team has proved that they don't want him because Kyrie wanted long-term money in the offseason. You presuppose Kevin Durant wanted Kyrie to get that long-term money, and the Nets said, no, thank you, we're not signing up for the crazy train that is Kyrie Irving, and now Kevin Durant wants to take his basketball and go home. So it's going to be real interesting to me to see how this plays out, because we're about to have a new TV deal, but we also need to have a new agreement between the owners and the players. And a lot of owners around the league, especially small market owners, which guys don't want to hear about because they don't really care about the Pacers, and they don't really care about the Magic, and they don't really care about the Hornets, and they don't really care about the Blazers, but those teams make up the NBA. And if those owners are like, why am I just going to keep drafting guys just to farm them out, maybe then pay them, so then I have to trade them? No, something is going to be done, and Kevin Durant is not helping the players' argument with his behavior at the beginning of this particular season.
Nope. And the kicker is, if you think about a bell curve, right? James Harden was on the early phase of the bell curve where he could force himself out. And the Houston Rockets relented. In part because I think Morey had a soft spot in his heart for James Harden.
Clearly.
But I just don't think the NBA is there anymore. And I think you're absolutely right that the reason the Brooklyn Nets have managed this process the way they have is because Commissioner Silver is beginning the rhetoric, rightly so, of saying, like, we need to talk about the reality of these contracts and what they mean and how we're going to, as a league, reinforce them. We can't sign contracts in good faith and have players, especially high-profile ones, say, you know what, it really didn't matter anyways, I want out. I just think that there's a lot going on here that Kevin Durant just happened to make an announcement at a bad time. If he had done it 3 or 4 years earlier, perhaps there's a situation by which it happens. He's younger, but two, I think the league is in a different place. Now it's a different reality that he's going to have to contend with, and he might just not get what he wants right out of the gate.
Father Pete, you and I are a little north of this particular basketball situation, but we see it in our very state that we reside in here. I won't call it your home state because I know you're a Michigan man at heart, but the state that you reside in now, the
Right
Pacers. This is a basketball crazy state, okay? The Pacers. The Pacers had Paul George. Things were looking great for the Pacers. They built a new field
Another
house.
example.
Can't draw anything now because I really true believe what you were just speaking to right there. The fans themselves feel cheated. They say to themselves, hey man, we invested all this stuff in Paul George and he basically just flat out said to us, nah man, I'm good. I'm not going to play there anymore. And then we had to trade the guy on a deal that he signed to him, and now nobody else has come to the Pacers. So I really do think that is going to be at play, and Silver knows that as much as TV makes the world go round, because that's what makes the NFL king, they still need butts in seats. Otherwise, 82 games is going to become untenable.
Totally. And you see them trying to adjust that. I mean, they already have an issue in terms of overall ratings for in-season games. They're talking about the in-season playoff tournament or whatever the heck it is. You know, I think that all of this is wrapped up in, okay, we recognize that player salaries have gone to such a level that we need to make sure that we're great with our media partners. And some of that requires a certain degree of consistency and what you can expect, not only from the fan perspective, who's actually in venue, but also the fan who's sitting at home watching it on Fox Sports 1 or ESPN.
That's very true, because I'll tell you what, if it's a big Thursday night game between the Bucks and the Celtics, and I'm like, all right, here we go. Now, that's probably a bad example because Giannis never sits out. But you know what I mean? If Giannis was sitting out because he just wanted to sit out, and then Jason Tatum was sitting out because they had some sort of rest, and I'm not watching that game.
Yeah, so we'll have to pay attention, but there's other layers to the Kevin Durant scenario, and if I could maybe just kind of conclude with this on Durant, you know, I've reflected on him a little bit, not a ton, but the priest in me believes that, you know, you always have to be careful about public figures and the persona that they put out there. Rarely does that make the man. More often, what you see at that level is the way that they themselves have sought to figure out how to live and move and have their being as a public figure. But rarely does it reveal their kind of true inner self. And so I think when we're engaging any public figure, it's going to be really important to recognize that every human being out there is trying the best that they can, given the givens that are tied to their circumstance. And so in all things, I think we should presume a certain degree of charity and seek to understand as opposed to kind of point a finger.
That is a very fair and wonderful point to make on this podcast, but I only ask that you hold me to that for everybody except Kyrie Irving. Is that all right? Can I agree, on those terms? All right, let's do some happy talk here on the way out. As I teased there a second ago, you are a Michigan man at heart. You are a Detroit basketball, and things are looking up in Detroit. Tell the folks why they should be most excited about your Pistons this year.
I just think that they're doing it the old-fashioned and right way. You know, the whole line, which regrettably the Philadelphia 76ers brought into the kind of like common lexicon is, you know, trust the process. And Detroit, we have suffered. The Detroit fans have suffered. I have presumed for the better part of the past 7 years that the most I can ever hope for is 25 wins. And, you know, and we've tried to do the old thing, you know, kind of flash in the pan, bring a guy in.
You traded for Blake Griffin. Come on.
I know. The man made of glass. Thank you, Stan Van Gundy. But what I love now is the Blake Griffin contract is off the books. He is gone, and we have this chance now to really see what Cade Cunningham can do. You know, Jeremy Grant now with the Portland Trail Blazers. I thought an excellent draft class this year. Heck yeah, totally. So do I think we're going to the wild card game this season? No, but I am really, really excited about, and I'll just throw out a team because we've just been talking about them. I have a feeling that if you kind of go back to the old school Westbrook, Harden, and Durant teams, kind of young upstart guys who got something to prove or just going to like get in your grill and lock you down on D. Well, maybe not so much on the D, but regardless, I think that that's what we can hopefully anticipate when it comes to the Pistons over the course of the next several years.
Oh God, let's hope that the futures for those guys on your team are better than where Durant, Harden, and Westbrook are all at right now. Goodness gracious, let's hope they don't all end up in those particular circumstances where teams are desperate to not pay Russell Westbrook to play basketball. KD wants to be traded from a team that he just signed a contract with, and James Harden. I guess actually James Harden might be back in good favor, right? He took less money for the Nets. Everybody says he's lost a little bit of weight. He's going to come back in shape and actually want to play this time. So who knows? Here, Father Pete, I'm going to blow your mind right here, right now.
Yeah,
There's a lot of numbers I see where you're getting 38, 38 and a half, maybe 39 is the over-under number for your Pistons. I'd almost be willing to bump the over. How crazy am I thinking that they might even touch 40 wins?
Look, I would love to be there with you, Rod. I don't think that's likely. And here's why. I think that it takes time to learn how to win in this league at a consistent level. I'm talking like I know. But
what you've seen, we get what you're saying. That's how we do things here on the Morgan Network. None of us have the experience firsthand, but we've watched an awful lot.
Yeah, and so I'm of the mind though that if you said to me 40 wins next year, I could get there. I do think that this team's going to have some heartbreaking losses. I would not be surprised if they're not like 32, 34, 35 wins somewhere in there. But I don't think 40 yet, but would love to see it.
I think you guys are going to get what happens in the NBA sometimes, I believe, in certain situations right now. And it can't ever last for long. But I think a team like Detroit with a guy like Cade, right? So he's the kind of guy that from everything you hear, he's a buy-in kind of guy, right? Dwayne Casey, from everything you hear, is a solid, legitimate NBA coach, right? Been there, done that, knows it all, won a Coach of the Year, been in playoff games, right? Maybe not top of the mountain coach, but certainly a good coach. So I think if a guy like Cade buys into Casey, and all these other young guys on the team follow him up, you're going to have a team that's all going to be pulling in one direction. And quite frankly, on a lot of NBA nights, a team pulling in one direction that's willing to play hard can win an awful lot of games.
No, that's absolutely right. And I love the fact that you put some shine on Dwayne Casey. I mean, God bless that man. He left an amazing situation in Toronto, and then he comes to Detroit, and he knew he had a massive rebuild. And he has just consistently showed up year after year and continued to chip away at it. I think you got to give some love to Troy Weaver,
Absolutely.
the GM. You know,
that
like
he draft, man.
And this is part of the reason why. This is part of the reason why I connect him to Oklahoma City, because he came from Oklahoma City, and he was like an understudy of Sam Presti. So to me, it's like I think Troy Weaver's doing exactly what Presti does in Oklahoma City, and I'm really, really excited about what Detroit's going to look like over the course of the next several years.
Well, listen, once Weaver left Oklahoma City, all they want to draft is tall, skinny white guys. That's all Oklahoma City wants ever since. They got Pokusevski and they got Holmgren down there now. Who knows what's going on in Oklahoma City? Listen, I like the Pistons an awful lot. I do. I think we're going to see a little bit of regression from the Bulls, right? A lot of people this time of year, Father Pete, don't want to be talking about that regression team. You know, everybody wants to say teams made adjustments. Everybody likes their team. But I think we're actually going to see a little bit of aggression out of the Bulls. I don't know that you're going to see another great year out of DeMar DeRozan. History just isn't on his side for a guy that advanced in age to have that kind of a jump up and be able to continue it.
That's right.
I think we sort of saw it out of Julius Randle already after his great year with the Knicks. Then he kind of bounced right back to earth that next year. Lonzo Ball was out, you know what I mean? It was Alex Caruso, maybe not as great as we thought. Patrick Williams is still going to be relied on an awful lot up there in Chicago. Vucevic. So I think that's going to open up things for them in the Central Division and maybe pick up some victories over the Bulls on nights that you didn't expect. The Pacers, I believe, are trying to be atrocious because the Pacers would love to be in the top of that lottery, which also fascinates me because of what we just talked about with Dwayne Casey. But a guy like Rick Carlisle, if he had hair, would be pulling it out all year long with the Pacers, I think, because he's always said he doesn't want to be a rebuilding guy, but that's clearly what he's doing right now.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. And you hate to say it, but you know, Rick Carlisle had an amazing situation down in Dallas, right? You got Luka Doncic, they had the opportunity to coach, and in a similar way to Dwayne Casey, you know, at Toronto, all of a sudden those opportunities evaporate. You know, the management wants to move on, and both of those teams now, the Detroit Pistons and the Indiana Pacers, have the chance to get, you know, coaches who know how to win. And in Rick Carlisle's case of been to the top of the mountain. So I think if the Pacers can play out the horizon in the way that the Detroit Pistons have, there's some real opportunity there. But I'm going to tell you, Rod, I'm available for you. It is going to be some suffering that you're going to have to encounter over the course of the next several years.
I appreciate that. Now, you know that with me in basketball's kind of weird, right? The Pacers are my hometown team, but for some reason, right, because the heart wants what the heart wants. When I was a kid, Larry Bird played for the Boston Celtics, and my dad is a graduate of Indiana State. So, I mean, we watched more Celtics games when I was a kid. So the Celtics are actually truly my favorite NBA team. So I'm good there. But my second favorite NBA team is by far the Pacers, and I'm not going to have to pay as much attention to them this year. There's no doubt. All right, Father Pete, that is enough here of your time. I appreciate you so much for coming on. I will try to get you back on maybe before the beginning of the season, at least soon after it, because you tend to be a pretty busy man there once school kicks off. And then I definitely want to try to get you before college basketball absolutely kicks into full gear.
Awesome, my brother. Thank you so much for putting me on, and it really is an honor.
Well, I'll tell you what, like I said, you always have a good perspective, and almost any time, not almost any time, every time I have you on, I walk away with like, man, Father Pete really made me think differently about that, and I'm usually better for it. So thank you so much.
Hey, thank you, and talk to you soon, Rod.
Absolutely. All right, Chris, that was a fabulous interview with Father Pete. You really should make sure you take a chance and listen back to that, because I'm sure you will enjoy it as much as I enjoyed having the conversation with him live and in person. But you made a fraudulent draft pick, Chris, and you did it on purpose, and so you had to suffer the consequences.
Listen, there's a reason why Father Pete is a Hall of Famer. And I am jealous I was not able to make it on that segment with you guys. However, I am still very confident in my apocalypse survival earth-saving team, more so every single day. The more I think about my team, the better I like it, and the better I think it is than everybody else's.
Well, there you have it. And the more I think about what we're going to do next week, I imagine we will be joined again by our football handicapper, Josh Williams, and we can pick out maybe one conference or a couple of divisions or something like that, or maybe even a little bit of fantasy. Because Chris, I know you're a guy who's got some fantasy thoughts. Maybe we can actually pin Williams down and see if we can't get a couple of fantasy opinions out of him this year. Maybe that's what we do next week.
Yeah, we need to, because every year he gives us an excuse. Well, I don't want to give away my secrets. I'm in a couple pay leagues. I don't want to give away all my thoughts and let people know. Well, we're going to hold him to the fire this year. We're going to make him tell us what he really thinks.
Love it. That's what we have planned for you here on Balls and Brew. Don't forget to check in with me and the producer of this very podcast, Jimmy Jamriska, over on Yeah We Know, where we give you our wrestling thoughts. And we're slowly but surely bringing Chris along. He's watching more and more wrestling, and he pops up every once in a while over on that show too, so you can always check that out. We do appreciate any and all of your listening and following and telling your friends to do the same. That's how we get the word out there. And, as much as we like doing this podcast, we'd like for more and more people to hear about it. That would be a great thing. And as always, Mr. King, the final word goes to you.
Goodbye, Internet.